Okay, so we can make it super interactive. You can feel free to stop me at any time. Uh, but thanks to our friends at Progress for having us here. We've got a Contiem team floating around. And today, what we want to talk about is a very specific use case with MarkLogic. So I'm going to share a little bit about our company to give you the context, share with you the way we view the content operations, the publishing ecosystem, talk about our interconnections with RSuite and how we're supporting content productions. And I'll just kind of walk through the flexible replication use case. So if you don't know Contiem, we rebranded about a year ago. We had acquired a collection of companies to put together essentially a business platform that allows companies to create, manage, publish, and deliver content. And the last part probably being one of the most significant pieces. So you hear us, all content is essentially all we do. From content operations, the creation of content, all the way through to the delivery of content. And so we have folks, everything in our company's a defined practice, meaning that with clients in 40 countries, everything has to be repeatable. Our corporate headquarters is down the road in Annapolis, Maryland. We've got operations in the UK, in India, and a satellite team in Australia. So if you think of our clients, they're all pretty much market leaders, and it makes sense. It's great that we want all these big name customers, but our clients are clients that have very sophisticated content operations, very sophisticated publishing requirements, and they're big because they're starting to crumble under the weight of content production. We, through one of our companies years ago, we were the very first MarkLogic application ever built. Through RSuite was the very first commercial application sold. And we've enjoyed just really a wonderful, wonderful history with the MarkLogic team. And that's been a combination of our commercial products built on top of it, and then also doing some custom publishing platforms for the government. One of the things I will say, and I'd say this if I wasn't at the summit, that really the database team, the MarkLogic team, and now Progress has just been fantastic. We love bringing them really hard problems, and they don't back down from it, and flexible replication is certainly one of those issues. We originally built the flexible replication of content for SOCOM, and it has been expanded since then, and I'll show you a little bit about that. We're going to talk specific to our government, aerospace, and defense market vertical. We support publishing in every kind of industry. Our clients are who you would expect. We probably touch you every single day. If you have an American Express card, every merchant in the world, all the documentation for being a merchant gets produced by our team. We've done, some of our clients are here presenting right now, actually. We've built custom platforms with the GPO team on the XPub program. If you bought something at Home Depot, there's a good chance that our team's reviewed those user manuals. If you have a garage door opener, the market leader, the world leader in that, we do all the content production with our RSuite platform and our tools. If you bought a book from HarperCollins, if you're a lot of discussion about faith, but the last NIV Bible produced with RSuite, with our platform. We touch content every way. If you took a train in the UK, every train operator in the UK gets updated on tech manuals and tech publications, all hosted by our platform outside of Gatwick. So content is what we do. When we think about content, and this is why flexible replication is really important to us, the way we decompose content operations starts with content creation. And content creation, our platforms support everything from typical unstructured authoring in Microsoft Word to very structured XML authoring. We support, unlike other component content management platforms, we support every XML standard out there. You can actually have your own custom DTD. A lot of folks who are go to MarkLogic because you can do and store any kind of XML or structured content, binary content, anything you want in there. Well, the platform that sits on top has to support the content as well, and so we do. So if you go through that process, we take content in, we transform the content, we use some of MarkLogic's capabilities depending upon what type of content it is, and then it gets componentized. For us, it's super important that all the content is broken down in as granular level as our clients require. I told you some of our clients are the biggest names in the world. They protect intellectual property from theft by componentizing it. There's no need for you to know the entire circuit design. Maybe you only need to know one element of it. And so how do you do that? How do you break it up? You componentize it. And then the problem gets more complicated when you decide you want to have teams operating all over the world on the same document, and then when you throw in denied communications, now it really gets fun. And so to do all of that, you have to have a content platform that sits on top. So it goes with componentization. Access is role-based access, group or individual, and the ability to edit the production of that content along the way. When you publish, we publish to every type of format we can publish. We have our own publishing and delivery portal. MarkLogic covers everything from the componentization through to the publish. We have our own composition engine, so we can publish everything from an EPUB to out to any delivery portal. So when we talk about content operations, I think one of the most important things for people is to reset. You know, SharePoint is a document system. You have absolutely no idea paragraph 6 in the document you're looking at. You couldn't tell me 5 other documents that's in. But for our customers, they need to know what other documents that paragraph 6 is in, and when I update paragraph 6, it needs to automatically publish and roll out to every type of deliverable, content deliverable that you are maintaining in your system. We do all that automatically, and so that's why our clients are generally very large. MarkLogic is a wonderful platform. A lot of our customers, we sit on top of MarkLogic. So in order to replicate content, you have to have a simple user interface that you can access it. It very much feels like a file directory. So you can launch workflows. Workflows are super important in a replication environment because you have to move content and you have to sync content while it's being moving through the enterprise. And of course, all throughout this whole process, if you tie your workflows in, we can also, thanks to some of the capabilities in the database, we can also validate the XML to make sure that it's conforming. We can build action handlers to make it conditional upon certain environmental conditions or content conditions, i.e. In healthcare, users who are in a particular state might have certain riders that go with them, and then you've got to have the ability to dynamically generate that content. You have to have a central authority for your content, and then version history. And so this is probably one of the more challenging and sporty aspects of replication across the enterprise, is being able to control versions. So I'm probably not doing it justice by just calling it a version history. There are some other folks in this event that will tell you other features like the publication definition and the snapshot editor. We've got to be able to say everything definitively about this content, every version, every transform, everything that went into the delivery of this content package about maybe an individual or a product has to be maintained and preserved with absolute integrity for 50 years. And so how do you do that? You have got to have something that sits on top of the database to do that, and that's native to our product. And then, of course, what led us together with our long history with MarkLogic has been semantics, and so you can build out in Semaphore, if you want, a very rich ontology to cover your taxonomy, to expand your taxonomy into an ontology, and then you can implement inside our platform a semantic search that governs and searches for concepts and searches for individual relationships inside your data. So think from a content perspective, there's some basic things that have to be built in order to take advantage of content operations and content production. All of that comes out of the box with RSuite. The second point of the application before we talk about replication is that you've got to have an automated workflow. So it's one thing for the database to sync across the enterprise, but more importantly, when it's syncing, you want the process automated. You want to take your business process and you want to be able to route it to individuals. And it gets very complicated if you talk about standards bodies. They have one route of one way of automating. If you have subject matter experts that have to look at your content, when do you insert them in? So you need a fairly sophisticated workflow engine. We're pretty proud of our workflow capabilities, and it's one of the more desirable aspects of people who go to large content platforms. They immediately realize routing content with definitive governance, right? So the point of this being that you're putting in governance in your IT fabric. That's what you're buying when you buy the solution, okay? So when you are routing content with us, with a MarkLogic database underneath, what you're doing is you're putting the checks and balances either organizationally, Bob or Sally has looked at it, or structurally, it's a structured authoring platform, so you've been able to verify that the XML structure is valid, okay? Or ontologically, right? So you have put in there, you've organized your content and you want to route your content along that ontological structure to make sure that both the content governance and the organizational governance is in compliance. So these are tools that sit on top of the database so that you can get the most out of your investment. The other stuff that is pretty much expected is what you would see is, you can imagine throughout the process, a lot of our clients, when you do content, alerting, automation, everyone cringes when they hear about automation, but if you're in our system, our customers, if you don't act on a certain time, they want everyone to know, right? They said, you have not done X, you should have done it by now. There's, interestingly, not discussed, but in our client base, often the opposite rule is put in place. If someone just forwards and checks off on a 150-page, very critical document, and they do it in 2.5 minutes, it gets a red flag that you haven't actually reviewed it properly. So we can go as deep as the organization wants to go with governance. But again, I will go back to the point of the talk that when you have distributed operations, it gets far more complex because that governance has to align with the network and the physical environment that you're in. So what is the flexible replication use case? Often clients say, well, databases sync, so what's the big deal? It's actually kind of a really big deal. So in our clients, in this particular use case, you will have a central operating location, okay? So you will have, we'll call it the data cloud, that connected environment that a person is operating in, and they're generating content, and they're very happy to generate content, and if you're the government, they're generating a lot of content, right? And then someone has to detach from that network, okay? And the challenge is when you start talking about intelligence, you're talking about a collection of interconnected content that they have to then detach from and then go to another place with intermittent communications and continue to expand on that content where synchronization occurs. And it's not just fire and forget. They're not just extracting material and then going downrange and playing with it on a LAN because they're learning, right? You have the interesting thing about content and content operations is that everyone is learning, and as new information is learned, more information is requested. So you have to keep the synchronization, and it has to go both ways. Now, keep in mind, we're doing this at a granular level. So you can go down to the paragraph, to the heading, to an image, to a table, and you can control it at any access level. And so what's happening is our customers will often use the workflow engine to route so that they know that a user group, and one of the interesting things, and I hear it from a lot of clients that they love, is that if you have a collection of, say, Intel analysts, they don't know who's available that day because the world acts funny at times, right? And so the group can go in and they can be assigned, oh, you're available, pick this package up, you guys go work it, right? And you can assign inside your role of an analyst or a senior analyst or something like that, where content is picked up. So the way to think about it is this is a fixed network in the center, and what you have are nodes with a local area network, and then you've got to sync those up at all levels of the content. Okay, and it's challenging, right? So if you've ever worked inside of a Microsoft Word document and it says you can't touch this because someone else is touching this document, you start to understand the complexity of working on a package and a collection of content. And so what typically happens, and we consider this to be one of the most sophisticated content production infrastructures that we've seen, is really content production for the intelligence community, is that you cannot rely on regular intervals, you cannot rely on when things will be available, and you have to pretty much assume that you're denied all the time, okay, and that assumption changes your behavior on how you operate. It gets into my earlier statement of strict version control. It's okay to be wrong. We just have to know what you were looking at when you were wrong, right? We have to have version control and strict content control for a particular period of time, because forensic analysis is super important. And so what happens is most synchronization networks and databases sync one direction. Think of failover in Coop. It's gone down, it's picked it up, and you're doing backups at some interval to make sure it's as fresh as possible. When you talk about two-way synchronization, it's not one direction. You have updates in one node pushing out, you have updates at the far edge node coming back in. Very complicated, and it requires granular control of your data, which is why you would go to an RSuite, why you would go to a component content management platform. So in my mind, we are often asked by the IT admins, well, I already have Coop and I already have DR in place, and so what's the big deal? And in fact, one of the things that I noticed is not prominent in MarkLogic literature, but when I first started working with them, they would say, hey, we're an ACID compliant database. I was like, what does that mean, right? And the big takeaway from my perspective was that we have to maintain the integrity of the content pre, during, post communication and replication, because if we don't have that, then we have a problem. And so the source content created on our platform, on RSuite, has to be synced with that MarkLogic server, and interestingly then can be replicated back out to other local area networks. And so it's not just a two-directional sync with essentially the fixed site. The fixed site might then push out to another location. So you often see this in places where you have operations that cross COCOM or the combat commands. If you have people moving in and out of, say, Africa and the Middle East and things like that, you know, these nodes get replicated and you have to move them across. So one of the things about why we are huge fans of MarkLogic is that our clients want to make data. It doesn't matter if it's commercial or not. It has to be continuously available, and it's got to be available to those applications. You can't have kind of a network error that brings your applications down, and I think that the performance is fantastic. And so if you're in that situation, and I'm not just saying this because we're at a MarkLogic event, with Progress, but at the end of the day, we've worked with enough customers that have asked us to rip off the database and try to build their own, and it's a disaster every time because it is complicated. This is the performance, and your query performance can be greatly impacted when you have content hung up because it's somewhere in transit. So what we see is that just the access to content is more universally solid, consistent, and replicated. The other thing too is that we have the ability in a clustered environment, to move based on the resources and the load demands. So these can be, local area networks can be on a laptop, or they could be on a small cluster, and it really just depends on the kind of content that you're moving. So I think really on our side, the integration of both MarkLogic and our kind of flagship RSuite platform, we provide some of that user functionality, that critical user functionality that allows people to move the content around, that allows them to support the replication, the versioning, and automated workflow. And those three things are so important because you have to move content, and you've got to version it. And the versioning at the component level. So what that means is if you have, say, two different tables that are being worked, you've got to preserve that and where they were worked, who touched them, and having the integrity to go all the way back at the most granular level is really important. This is where commercial and government kind of overlap because a lot of our clients are in regulated industries, so they have to know what transforms were applied. They have to know where it was done and when it was done. And so government has certainly benefited from that investment because governance is everything. And the replication can be push or pull or both from the master to the replica. I mean, that we depending upon the use case, it usually ends up being push and pull. And so what you have is a fixed site that's pushing content out and is looking for updates and pulling it back in at the same time. MarkLogic does a pretty decent job on giving you an intro on their website to replication and how it works. We're proud of the fact that our application supports it because you want some kind of content management platform on top of replication, and you want it to be, like I said, at the component level, and you need to have it automated so you can put in those checks along the way. So to kind of wrap it up, I wanted to leave some room for some questions. All we do is content, so we love talking about it. Our folks will talk about it all day. We create, manage, publish, deliver content. We do it. We have some clients like the UK that have 70,000 users that are receiving updates every day. That's probably a great example because you can imagine if you're a train operator, our clients want to know that the safety bulletin was read. They want an acknowledgement that the safety bulletin. The same is true in the intelligence community. You want an acknowledgement. It's terrible because I always use this example with my kids when they were little. I want like eye contact. Yes, Daddy, right? Like I need to know because otherwise it never happened, So it's really important in content systems that we have the same thing, that we have the digital ability to verify. And so having the end-to-end or someone that does the end-to-end is very helpful. Content production, we kind of think about it as, our needs are different. I said this earlier to someone, if you happen to be, say, a large department of something that wanted to change their name overnight, how long is that going to take you? Because in our platform, it'll take about 30 seconds. We'll route the name change with the new logo to the approval authority, and then all content is published. If you do multiple publications, so you look at all of you who go to doctors in this country, every doctor has to be certified by the Joint Commission. The Joint Commission accredits every hospital, every every medical provider, you cannot get paid by CMS without it. So they publish with our platform. And so what they do is they do loose leaf publishing. So the same is true here. If the content changes, you want the ability to say, okay, in A1, it's actually on page 37, it's going to be 37-1, 37-2, 37-3. So all of those things can be synced up when you have new content coming in. So if you've already published content, you've replicated, and you learned this is wrong, you have the ability to automatically update previously published content and preserve that legacy. And so those are some of the things that we do. And the last thing I'll say about the content synchronization is that it's a real challenge, and we really encourage our customers to, when they are in that environment, to really evaluate the capabilities. A lot of folks in IT organizations will say, well, gosh, it doesn't seem that hard. Okay, we want to kind of build this ourselves because we'll save money on databases, and I just haven't seen that work out well. And so maybe there's someone out there doing it. I'd love to hear it, but it's a lot harder than it looks. It's one thing to move a document back and forth, right? But it's another thing to sync up 27 paragraphs worked in 4 locations, online and offline, into one coherent publication. And we feel like that's kind of the market, not just intelligence, but we have customers all over the world. They have operations. It's hard for us to find clients in one location. Our regular meetings with customers they're in 2-3 countries. And so they're not all online, they're not all at the same time, and that's just commercial. So anyway, so that's pretty much all I was going to talk about today, and I'm happy to take questions, and thanks for taking the time to listen. Yes, sir.
So your collaborative publishing, they work on the content together, they're moving it through the workflow. For those customers that are in that very replicated environment, are they also sharing the management data about what is the status of the product?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to expand the question a little bit more. So the question was, are we expanding the management of the data as they're collaborating? And so there's the management of the data, and I'll say the metadata and the artifact metadata about the data absolutely is passed and shared. And then that's what the workflow engine is doing. It's showing you exactly who has what and where it is. And all of that is available to the correct authorized individuals. So they can see where it is, and they can authorize, if it's stuck, you can authorize it to be reassigned or moved or something like that. So there has to be full transparency in a replication environment, or it doesn't work, because you end up burying everybody with requests.
And there's no assumption that those people are only at the fixed sites. They can be in any of the sites, right?
Yeah, correct. So the assumption isn't that they're all in one location. And the way I showed the diagram probably is a little misleading, because it looks like they're just connected in kind of one of these edge clusters with the fixed site. In reality, the edge clusters will talk to other edge clusters, and they can do that through a fixed site. And so you have multiple networks that are being set up. Yeah. Any other questions?
Question on the security side, for particularly think of the DoD side. Managing security, access, management of the data, particularly down to the edge. How have you, any examples or customers that have used that or implemented that?
Yeah, so you have the ability to do paragraph level marking and controls in the whole network. That's what a componentized system brings to the table. So if you think of a document componentized at the paragraph level with the appropriate security controls at each paragraph, right, and then the document level. So you can distribute at that component level, and then assemble, at the right security level, for the finished product. So yeah, it's absolutely, I would say there isn't a customer we have, commercial or DoD, that doesn't push that all the way down to as granular as they can.
Interesting. And when they move to DOW instead of DOD, that'll be handy.
Yeah, it's going to take me a while. I'm still calling it COCOMs, or so it's going to be a while for me to catch up. Question?
I just have a kind of a general question. Can this be hosted in a government environment, like I don't know if you're familiar with the IL4 or IL5 environment? No, you're not.
Yeah. So yes. I'm going to pivot. Can it be posted in L4, L5? Well, I will say this. MarkLogic and our application have had ATOs at any level, right? And you can deploy on-prem. So, as long as your on-prem team is managing that. But yes, we absolutely support that. In fact, the simple truth is, when we talk about AI and we talk about content, to put it in perspective, we have a very large company in Europe who is a semiconductor major player. They have built their own conference room with their own security to make sure that a certain Asian country doesn't try to steal their stuff. So yeah, you think that the Defense Department and the military has the market cornered on security, and at the end of the day, those same security controls are really being used by most major tech companies on the planet. They are really trying to rigidly control, and their IT departments are the ones doing it. They're not letting anybody SaaS that out to some open platform. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you protect your intellectual property, and what actions do you take to safeguard it?
So Contiem's intellectual property, or our intellectual property, we've got 19 US patents covering a lot of our technology. So we're pretty happy with that patent position. And interestingly, our customers are protecting their intellectual property. I mean, I say it all the time as a joke. Your IT department knows if you've tried to hit a naughty website. They have no idea who downloaded the schematics for the circuit diagrams and where they are. We know, because only certain authorized people. So there's protection from a commercial company. We do that through patents, okay? For our clients, they're using very componentized decomposition of their intellectual property and putting controls in place, role-based access control, and who can touch it. There's no need to send. In the old days, I remember I worked on an Air Force project, and the architecture was a 150-page document, and they emailed it around, even though you didn't need to know anything but maybe 5 pages in that document, but there was no way to componentize and route it. Now, with today's technology, we can do that easily. It includes multimedia content, includes graphs, it includes any kind of content. We can store it all in MarkLogic, and we can componentize it. And we call them managed objects. So all of those objects are role-based controlled.
And when breach happens, what do you do?
Well, we haven't had one. So if we had one, we would know. I mean, you know exactly. It would be really tough, but if you had one, you have full lineage. You know exactly who touched what. And that to me is probably the most compelling reason to go to a CCMS. You have no idea in SharePoint. You really have no clue.
Sure.
But you will know in our system who touched diagram 7, okay? And you will know because they will have checked that object, they will have touched that object, and all of that is stored in the audit logs.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
It's a weeds question that you would expect from me. Notice DLA was on there. Are you having to do portion marking for CUI, distro A, B, C, D?
Not for the project for them. What we're
Okay.
doing for them is, they're a wonderful customer. There's many DLA people here, wonderful people. We support their standards organization.
Okay.
And they're trying to standardize the standard. Turns out they're not standard. So that's, because it all originated in unstructured world in a Word document and trying to break all that down. So it's marked, but not necessarily that level of marking. Sure. Any other questions? Okay, well, I'm happy to give you some of your time back, and thanks for the opportunity. And like I said, thanks for listening.